It's been almost 3 years since the U.S. withdrew all of its troops from Afghanistan, and that messy departure continues to be a major point of contention here on Capitol Hill. The issue came up again this week when former Joint Chiefs Chairman Mark Milley and former CENTCOM head Kenneth McKenzie testified on Capitol Hill about what they know of the departure and their role in it. Now, this is the first time the two have been on Capitol Hill talking about this since they retired from the military. And as he has in the past, Milley left some of the blame at the feet of the State Department and the administration for their decision to go against his recommendation to keep some troops in the country past August 2021.
In previous public testimony, I noted that at that time, my analysis based on my assessment and the recommendations of the commanders, to include General McKenzie, and the consensus of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, was that we needed to maintain a minimum force of 2,500 troops on the ground, mostly special forces, with allied troops and contractors, in order to sustain the Afghan National Security Forces and its government until the diplomatic conditions of the Doha Agreement were met. Without this support, it was my view at the time that it was only a matter of when, not if, the Afghan government would collapse and the Taliban would take control. Again, I previously publicly testified, and I consistently supported a negotiated end to the war, but only if there was a reduction in violence leading to a permanent ceasefire, and there were Afghan-to-Afghan negotiations leading to a power-sharing agreement between the Afghan government and the Taliban. And it was my view that absent those conditions, I was not in favor of a unilateral withdrawal of U.S. forces because of my assessment of the associated costs and risks.
But the former Joint Chiefs Chairman also noted that there's not one single decision or one single mistake that led to the chaotic departure from Afghanistan. And in fact, the problems date back to multiple administrations and multiple years of military operations there.
At the peak of our military commitment in 2011, the United States had just over 100,000, or just under 100,000 troops and about 20,000 DoD contractors. That same year, the United States began to steadily draw down troops, close bases, and retrograde equipment. Nothing we're going to discuss today happened overnight. It was a process of withdrawal that spanned a decade. The outcome in Afghanistan was the cumulative effect of many decisions over many years of war. And like any complex phenomena, there's no single causal factor that determined the outcome, but multiple factors in combination. In the fall of 2020, as I previously testified publicly, my analysis, my personal analysis, was that an accelerated withdrawal would likely lead to the general collapse of the Afghan security forces and the Afghan government.
Now, this week's testimony didn't break any new major ground. Both Milley and McKenzie have testified multiple times on Capitol Hill, but it does indicate that this issue will continue to be a major topic going through the election. Republican leaders have promised as much, and House Foreign Affairs Chairman Mike McCall said that he intends to hold more hearings in the future.
People all over the world watched as babies were flung over barbed wire fence by mothers without hope. Desperate Afghans fell to their deaths from airplanes, and hordes of people surrounded the airport as they tried to flee for their lives. The damage to our reputation and our credibility, the United States credibility around the world, that damage will last for generations. Our service members were forced to watch as American citizens and Afghan allies were beaten and murdered outside the gates of the airport. These brave Americans were told to stand by as terrorists brutalized innocent civilians. And then on the morning of August 26, we watched in horror as reports of a terrorist attack at Abbey Gate flooded the news. 13 U.S. service members were murdered, with dozens more injured. 170 Afghans were killed, with countless injured as well. Some of the Abbey Gate Gold Star families members are here today, and we honor you. We honor your sacrifice here today. To the families here today and to the American people, I say, I will not rest until I get to the bottom of this tragedy.
Democrats dismissed much of the hearing as just political theater and laid a lot of the problems with the Afghanistan mission at the feet of President Donald Trump, who negotiated a withdrawal agreement with Taliban leaders back in 2020. But both Milley and McKenzie said it was important for them to show up on Capitol Hill and answer questions on behalf of the families and the troops who sacrificed their time there. For Military Times, I'm Leo Shane.